Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Lafreniere, and I'm from Ohio University, regional campus of Ohio University in Chillicothe, just south of Columbus, Ohio. And I'm here to present to you on the topic of using a collaboratory to make student thinking visible. The idea is, how can we elicit the information that's going on inside of our students' minds, put it through a channel of digital medium such as what I'm presenting today, and provide the necessary feedback to our students to help create the conceptions they need to succeed. In the example I'm using today is developmental mathematics. This can extend into many of the other areas that I teach with college algebra, calculus, engineering courses that I also teach, as well as physics, chemistry, and it can go on into non-STEM courses as well. I'll talk briefly about that at the very end. That said, I want to give you some background as to what led me to this point. It's been an undertaking of the last 9-10 years trying to get to this point of trying to elicit what students are thinking and how can we gather that information so that we can truly understand whether or not they're mastering the material, especially in the area of the example that I have for you today of developmental mathematics, to carry on the long-term use of the knowledge that they're gaining at that point in time of a course such as developmental math. So peering into a student's cognitive and conceptual approach is possible using a tool that I'm going to present to you today known as WebAssign. Now, I've been moving throughout a number of tools, and you'll see bits and pieces of those as I've tried to show you the timeline as to where we are today, and you can see how they might be the stepping stones that led me to where I'm at. But where a lot of this comes from are a number of research books and texts that I've used to help gather the knowledge that I have at this point in time. One in particular, John Hattie, in 2012, dealing with visible thinking and visible learning techniques, a meta-analysis of many techniques that are out there in terms of knowing thy impact, understanding what is it as a teacher we actually contribute to our students' learning, and first and foremost, what is it that they know so that we can make that impact, and a positive one at that. So I've done my best here to just put the slides on the campus technology website, and I put a nice blurb here that I'm not going to read by any means. It's merely for reference sake, the description of our presentation today, so you have an idea, should you go back and want to look through the slides, to get an overview of what the culmination of all this is about. The idea here is to put together a sequence of steps as to how could you build a collaboratory, and I borrow that term from a fellow in the 1980s known as William Wolfe, leader of our academic sciences, and someone who actually, as far as I can tell, coined the phrase. And so there was an initial interest in my earlier work. Right around 2006-07, I left administration happily to return back to my faculty status as a professor at our campus, as well as a researcher, and well on my way to trying to develop some new ideas. And so I was trying to think, how can I get the notes of what we were doing in the classroom in the hands of our students and spend more time, and this was on the cusp of the flip technologies and many of the other things that were starting to take hold, and putting it in their hands so that in turn I could receive what they're writing and thinking as well. I have a strong belief in what they write is a window into what they think, and I have the ability, with the tools that I'm going to share with you today, to capture even those moments that they're thinking that aren't correct, that could be potential misconceptions that need correction in their thinking to build further their mastery of the material. So what you'll see is this concern over this distribution of notes and the assumption that outside of that it was just monolithic. It was just going out with the hopes that it was being retained all the same by those in the audience. And it obviously wasn't the case. It was quite an assumption to make that. And I used some of the mathematical education underpinnings of George Polya, a mathematician of the 1950s, staging out the different steps it takes to go into this world of problem solving that covered the mathematical areas that I was concerned about, as well as my bias and interest, which was to feed our engineering program that I ran and taught in as well. And so we had to have students understand the problems. We wanted them to really see what it was the problem was about and how could you elicit that. And then ultimately they had a plan that they could pull from by example or develop themselves, then carrying out a solution to that problem. And so there was an implementation strategy that Polya prescribes. And ultimately the key part to this that I've hinged on is looking back and reflecting on what it is that they did in the hopes of not only adding to their attitudes about the problem solving and improving those, but truly securing validation that they are on the right track and that they're actually solving the problems with techniques that might be strategically sound. And so there are two other underpinnings to this that come about from a lot of what you hear in Common Core and other types of phrases that are out there today that have been long since been around in NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, dealing with procedural fluency and conceptual understanding, those being the two underpinnings that will lead to many of the things such as adaptive reasoning, strategic competency, and ultimately a student's productive disposition, a desire to want to learn more and validate what they're learning. And so these are all the things that are going into what has led to this presentation today. And so I use this term from William Wolfe, known as the Collaboratory. It's a phrase coined that he had intended originally for researchers across the country, designed mostly for electrical engineers, another part of my background, to try to get them to collaborate across state lines and regional districts that were just not conveniently located. And so they were using the electronic world of the networks that were forming in the early 90s, late 80s that were taking place. Well, that's the idea here, is that now it's being used for the students to collaborate and work with one another as well as the instructor or instructors of the course. And the goal here that's really, I think, the important takeaway is that every student can come to the board. And this is translated into students who would be in the near vicinity of plain line of sight, to those that are in a hybrid format coming and going from class as they wish, to those that are truly online. Hybrid's really just another online course, so I was able to merge the three as a part of this approach, this collaborative approach. Now the key to it is how to find software that will allow that connectivity to take place, to capture their thinking. And I must say there's a key part to this that is crucial that I believe will be a big part of our future. And I'm going to talk to how some of the patents that are coming out of Apple and some of the other technologies that already exist when it comes to the tools that we've created as humans. The stylus, it hasn't gotten a lot of fanfare when you look at reading Steve Jobs' biography and things of that nature and simplicity, but tools can really help us improve the precision of what symbolically can be represented beyond the words that we can type through keyboards. And so I'll be stressing that as a crucial element, and it's a leap because of the cost associated with hardware. It tends to be prohibitive for some. So I look back to the days, you're seeing my students in this particular setting where they're actually working in a classroom setting, working on tablets that we happen to have equipped. As I left administration, I was fortunate enough to have budgetary insights to help ease the transition in getting the hardware. And what we chose to do as an argument was to not take and revamp the entire computer lab systems that we had, but to just simply add an additional writing surface to take advantage of what I was pursuing at the time, the student thinking through their writing and their scribblings. And so we added a second monitor, which was a huge success. Many folks nowadays have two monitors. So they change out the computers in lieu of the extra monitoring device that we have there for purposes of writing. So we look back to the days of Slate. This is nothing really new. Students have been, I missed this slide earlier, students have long since been putting their information together and thinking of what they're going to write down so that they can show the teacher as well as the fellow students in their class the thinking that's going on. So this is something that from Slate to now Silicon, in a sense the digital age of what Slate is, that's what was going through my mind when I saw these pictures and putting it to use in the classroom. Now the class itself has modeled the flipped approach so that students, when they're in their mode of going home and outside the classroom activity, they're watching videos, they're engaging in video content. There's been an evolution there from YouTube videos to what I now use as Edpuzzle. I saw some in the previous lecture. The folks that had different tools as well, you may want to take a look at their notes and their presentation slides. They had other tools. But there are tools that you'll see I'm integrating into this one learning assessment system. Really, it's a learning environment that WebAssign provides me to create all these intricate ways of organizing materials to form this collaboratory. But what's key about going from YouTube to other types of tools with video is it's very reminiscent of Khan Academy, where I can actually see how students interact with the video and intersperse questions and abilities to elicit feedback from students at particular times in the video. And so that's part of this environment. So they're coming to class giving me insights to what they've been viewing or not, because some students, I've noticed, the attention span's around 4 minutes in my videos, and that's just a reflection of me personally, maybe, to some degree. I don't have a broad statement of the times that videos are viewed by all students across all subjects, but I'm noticing what exactly is the area of their attention span for the content that we're delivering. We've been able to improve their attention span with tools like this, though. That's been interesting, or at least their engagement, I should say. So we flip the classroom and we bring the students into classroom, so you're seeing them much like the screen here, where they're asked to participate. And each one of them is literally coming to the board through the use of the web-assigned tools that we have for assessment purposes, as well as the tools for drawing and inking on the screen. And it's all linked, and I'm going to ask somebody to at least participate with the proprietary version I started out with. I'm going to show you where I was and where we're going here as best I can. And so the idea was to gather that information, and it records every step they take, every write and stroke, even they erase. It puts it out there so I can play it back and understand what was evolving in their scribblings and hopefully a closer fidelity to their thinking, so that I can intercede and provide an unraveling of misconceptions or appropriate questions that might help them further strengthen their own conceptions of solving mathematical problems or STEM-related questions. Now, there are a number of other features that are out there that are typical that we take advantage of in this Collaboratory, and the key to it all is really this component of online assessment for us. To symbolically create questions that I don't have to stage the answers exactly. I have the flexibility, thanks to WebAssign, to go about using mathematics-based computer algebra systems and other types of tools that give you a broad range of solutions that students have equivalency to. So I'm not tied down to the creating of assessments. I'm more into the unraveling of their concepts and peering into their mind with the time savings that comes with these types of online learning assessments tools. So here's the visible approaches. These are the influences that are coming into today's current status of this project. And the idea of the video content being viewed. As I mentioned, YouTube to Edpuzzle, and actually trying to decipher what is it the students are engaging in with the video, and where are they spending time pausing and rewinding has been rather insightful, what YouTube calls hotspots. I used that data initially in a generic sense. Now with Edpuzzle, I can peer exactly what each student individually is doing without a lot of overhead. There's a sign-on, but after that, I can track many of their interactions with the video content. And I have quizzing capabilities built right into that video content, thanks to my ability to integrate with the WebAssign and all the third-party possibilities they provide. The other is digital inking. So you're seeing a two-pronged theme here of what I foresee as the future. As we saw in the expo, the number of video authoring tools and hardware solutions out there to try to capture ourselves in the classroom and our production of content. The other area I was pushing for, didn't see much of, is this idea of digital inking, writing and with tools that allow us the precision. I'm going to show you some of the freer things that are out there as I keep moving towards those pathways of digital inking. And what you're seeing on the screen here that's of particular interest to me is I suspect and I hope as I watch Apple and some of their moves, I predominate with Android and Windows. I've got a Surface up here and I've got an Android phone and tablets and things of that nature that work well with some of the stylus capabilities that come inherent with those devices. Yet Apple, if you see the circled image on the screen, has been progressing with their stylus patents. If you look from 2009 to just recently in December of 2014, you can see great leaps with this particular device, as when they ever choose to release it, should they ever, has the ability to write much like this device, but with the irrelevance of a Surface, and the ability to transmit and broadcast in ways much like reminiscent of Bluetooth. So it allows students to really share their ink, and I'm hoping at a cost basis, allow them to have somewhat close to a pencil disposable kind of atmosphere that it breaks down that prohibitive hardware pricing structure that's in place for a lot of these devices. So these are the things that are coming down the line that I'm looking for a much broader bring your own device experience for our students. And as we go down this, the thinking process, you'll see pretty much 3 different projects that have influenced me in this point in time. Project Zero out of Harvard with the Making Thinking Visible processes. This is just one example of a rather impressive book that they put. I put all these materials at the end in a bibliography. And then Visible Learning with John Hattie. His big theme for the most part out of Australia is deliberate practice. And these are the keys that are inherent in the tool that I'm about to show you with a WebAssign tool, allowing my students to go through with conditional release and really creating adaptive ways for them to engage in the content. And then Making It Stick is another particular book that had great influence, and you'll see a number of elements where retrieval practice, very similar to what Hattie was talking about with practice, elaboration, which goes more into the conceptual building, and then, of course, generation reflection, very similar, if you notice, to Polya's ideas, some of the things that were established back in the 1950s. The key here, as time has been saved with the assessment tools that I'm using, is I'm able to really spend time playing back, or if you would, look back at student-submitted works, which had been lost. I had such large classes, 100 students a semester. Trying to manage and look at all that particular information is overwhelming, to say the least. Yet when you capture digital ink, you're just capturing another form of data. And there are tools. We saw one in the expo, I forget the name, but it's a math tool. They're reading the writings of the students and formulating checks and X's of whether they're progressing right. But fluid math and other tools that are out there with the ability to read digital ink is just the cusp of what the next wave of data collection and analyzing it is. We can actually grade what the student writes to a limited basis at these early stages. If I get them to write in a certain corner of the screen, I know where to grade. I can write a program. It can go get that information and give me some minimal feedback. And so the digital ink, what I believe is that it uncovers the thinking of the student much more so than sometimes multiple choice, or thank goodness there's more symbolic possibilities with a web assign to allow you to see it on a more automated data collection basis, to really peer into the student's mind, and then provide the feedback that goes with that. So how did I create this Collaboratory? I don't consider earth-shattering. It's just a formulation of tools that have evolved over the years since 2006, roughly. You certainly need a computer of sorts, and I don't claim that that has to be a PC, even though that's what I wrote at the time. Tablet PCs had been a favorite of mine, or you can simply use a monitor attached to a device. I've seen it used with Macs. Other types of computers that allow you to have such a device we saw at the expo this time around, known as Wacom devices. Microphone certainly helps because as I teach in the classroom setting, I'm actually broadcasting normally. I'm running another device where broadcasting of WebEx type environments are being shown all over the connections of students that I have. I have students across the continental United States, but I've had them as far away as Korea and trying to connect, and that makes it interesting on an asynchronous basis given time zone issues. So projectors, of course, having the ability to broadcast, it's not as important as it once was because the ability to share across the screens to the students. So the projector is not becoming as crucial as it once was at the beginning. Multiple projectors certainly helps in a traditional classroom. Having two had certainly made a difference. You can see some examples on the screen that I was influenced by when I was first looking at setting this up. Some folks out of Rochester Institute of Technology and the like. Then the key for all of it really is tying the software together. And I'm going to show you a bit of software. The company itself is giving me insights given how I use their product beyond what they intended in Dino. And I've been making a migration solely to WebAssign because of their lack of desire to roll this product out further and further. So you'll see some things that are available that I want to plant the seed of what can be. They're catering to the K through 12 market mostly, and they're shifting to a monitoring, watch students, watch websites to keep them under control kind of philosophy, and they're losing interest in this vision writing of digital ink. I think it has a lot to do with Microsoft OneNote's encroachment into that arena in the education market, and they're seeing a lot of competition there. But that's a big part of sharing the notes. When I write my notes in the traditional sense on the screen, my students are seeing it through a product at the time known as Dino. So they can actually watch me writing, and they in turn can return the writing in back. So they're all getting different versions of their own notes. They can save and keep and have those annotations, and I can retrieve them as we work in the classroom setting. And so if you're interested to see, that's a good starting point. There are other tools out there I put at the end of the slide known as Classroom Presenter. This was a big project off of Microsoft with their ability to take advantage of digital ink. The other, of course, is a way to broadcast it. We use Adobe Connect at our university. That's changing, so I'm not loyal to one particular video broadcast tool that allows you to distribute your screen sharing and the tools that allow you to chat and poll and communicate. So that became somewhat irrelevant what particular product was being chosen there. Ultimately, we screen capture all that. We use Panopto at the moment, but it's just a matter of collecting the information and sharing it across the different students who need it. Now, set the stage here, this fidelity term, this cognitive and mathematical fidelity term is how I've described it based on my readings and collecting a number of different resources here to try to drive this idea is to see accurately what thoughts and concepts is my main focus are occurring in the mind, how to make that visible. And these terms aren't mine, these are ones borrowed from the many authors I already mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation. Hattie is one that has the biggest amount of influence in the earlier days I learned from him and his meta-analysis. Mathematically, fidelity is really interesting because of the standpoint of how do you convey, using digital tools, the mathematical thinkings and workings of a student when you're constricting them to inputs that could be as simple as multiple choice. Or then you expand on that and you start to allow fill in the blank, or you start to go even further with symbolic equivalent expressions. You're getting closer to mathematical symbolic fidelity that might be truer than what we started off with multiple choice. They're having more range of choice in conveying their thinking in the hopes that it's matching or having a greater connection of fidelity to what they're thinking. And graphically. And so then the other possibility exists, why are we limiting ourselves to just that? Are there other ways to communicate mathematics that are digitally better than what we've been used to over the millennia that we've been working with this idea of mathematics? And so I turned to WebAssign for that purpose in trying to draw that mathematical fidelity out. And so what you'll see here is an example out of WebAssign that starts that process. The Dino initial screening, I have a desire to show you an example here right now that we'll switch over to and show you how it's been attempted to be combined in WebAssign. I'm looking for one solution, if you noticed, when it comes to this. And so I'm going to pick on somebody in the audience here to just be kind enough to write some scribblings on the screen so we can see how this communication can work. Anybody dare wish to raise their hand? Try. Thank you. I like that. Looks like we're good to go here. So I've just got a tablet hooked up to my phone. I decided to bring my own hotspot. So you're welcome to scribble on the screen. Yeah, it's a walking. It's sensitive to the device. I paired them up so that it should scribble okay for you. She's going to go ahead and write. You can erase things. You can probably see the tools are rather intuitive. But more importantly here is what's about to take place between teacher and student. Keep in mind, I usually have students with these devices 30, 40 in size, and they're all writing at the same time, and it really does work rather well regardless. It's not a high bandwidth commitment. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to force her to follow along, and you're not going to see much right away in this attempt to try to I'm going to force her to follow me here just to make sure she sees some stuff. So we're not going to get too fancy here. I think a little fun script. So I'm hoping you see that on your screen. And she's getting real-time feedback as I write. And so we can do certainly mathematics freedom. We can write that. And she's got what? How much of a second delay are you dealing with? Yeah, and it can vary because of more connections, but the point is she's starting to see this material. So you can write on it with no consequences to my screen whatsoever, and I'd ask you to do so. Just scribble whatever you like so you can give us some feedback. And what's interesting about this is that we can now collect what she's writing. And so I can go through and manage to control this information. Keep in mind the concepts here is more important than the software itself. And so what is going to happen here, I'm going to collect her information. Hopefully you wrote some things down for us. It just takes a very short period of time. She's been kind enough to support the effort here, and the productive disposition is quite high in her case. She's showing the attitude that I aspire to instill in each of my students. I love math, but what's more interesting about this is that she's given me insights to what she was doing. And so if we choose to play the ink, keep in mind it's digital and it's data. And the sequence at which the data is collected is just as important as the static image that forms the final conclusion. And we can see on the screen my evolution of writing that went into this particular slide. And if I chose to erase, those too are pieces that are captured. And what I found interesting when I finally had the time to look at my students' work, I could see where they went off on a tangent and where they went down a road or a path that was something I knew was a misconception amongst many students. And we can spend time on drilling into why those paths were created because they're confusing. Is this the procedural step I'm supposed to use? They're sorting between procedures. Remember the two pillars. They're sorting between heavily reliance on procedures. They watch videos and they mirror them. They say, that's what they did, replace this number. They're watching. The concepts aren't as solid until we spend time uncovering them. And having their thinking visible from this digital ink capture sequence is really key, in my opinion, to enlightening the instructor as well as the student. So the beauty of that is, if I go back into enhance my form of tools here, I'm just going to pick one just to finish this example off just a bit. And I know I'm getting close in my time where I want to be at. But I'm going to show you how quick I can share. And this is another feature that I would argue is key to making sure you can work digitally. I picked the wrong assignment, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and try this one. And so what we're getting is a little hint of, oops, got the wrong one. Too many keyboard shortcuts. We're going to take how quickly this is to put into her world. So she's trying to do some work. Can you imagine 30, 40 students where I'm trying to frame a problem and I'm writing it up on the chalkboard in the old days, spending an inordinate amount of time just trying to recreate the content. She should see that now, hopefully. Yeah, it's quick. She's getting a copy of the problem. This is the one that we send out for all the students to start to stage the problem. We're all working together. And then we divert to enhance to the web assignment capabilities that allow each student to experience their own unique version, because what happens in their own accounts is randomization. And so we're really building more on their procedural along with the discussion that adds to their conceptual. Now she can write on this. She could just as well write on it, if you don't mind, and erase some things and do what work she wants to. And I'm going to be rather impatient and grab some of her work without giving her much time to really solve it mathematically. Let me go ahead and retrieve, sorry. Hit the wrong, a little nervous up here. Good little nervous energy never hurts. All right, and so we've got this ability now to see. She's got a sense of humor as well. That's very good. And so we can see that she's provided this work that allows us to replay, and if she's added anything in addition to the notes that went along with this, we would be able to uncover that. So this is the concept I wish for you to see in your request for digital tools informing your own collaborators as we go into this new era, as I believe it's unfolding, of digital ink. Not only is it important to just watch and let people live, and you can record with Adobe Connect and WebExes and whatnot, the importance of seeing what the students are working individually in a digital inking environment is now possible with the Android and the Windows, and it's certainly going to be possible with the Apple environments and beyond, to where we can start taking advantage as we automate, as I'm about to show you, how to collect a lot of information through students and then spend more time, as I found, on these conceptual components. So thank you for that volunteering. That's very kind of her. Let's give her a little hand there. Thanks. Put you on the spot like that. I wish I could give it away to you if you just don't mind holding on to it for just a little longer. A little takeaway maybe, but let's go ahead with the presentation, a few more slides. So the idea that came to this one turning solution of WebAssign is that they offer the inking capabilities, and they're taking heed to some of the requests from us as faculty, trying to embellish the conceptual understanding that's taking place in students. Now they've got a great lead on it because their tools allow you to symbolically have a great deal of mathematical fidelity. They have simplification of grading with equivalencies that I don't have to worry myself with. I control the level of algebraic symbolic equivalencies as well as numerical exactness, because in engineering I have significant figures, I have needs for exact answers, there's a need to go back and forth so students understand these things. That's already built in to the tools that we use for assessment, and with those time savings, I'm able to spend more time uncovering the digital ink and the writings of my students to further take that second pillar and make it very strong to build all the other components of problem solving, adaptive, reasoning, strategic competencies, and even their attitudes, productive disposition, on top of procedural fluency and conceptual understanding. This is key to what I've seen in Asian cultures when they talk about the two pillars, the two key components to problem solving and learning. And so this time savings allows students to develop those procedural fluencies with great ease as a faculty member. And it goes beyond the basics of mathematics into the realm of calculus as well as physics, chemistry. They've got it really covered for my engineering purposes, as I've alluded to. The ability to cipher through the differences of equivalent equations and solutions and what would be considered right and wrong allows the faculty member to see if that matches their learning objectives. And so we're seeing in these slides a number of examples that would be considered acceptable by the student. And it's fun to get into the conversations in classrooms. Why is my answer not being accepted? And we spend time over not only the syntax and what was otherwise trying to get to the answer, but really the logical conclusions of what symbolically we've reasoned to be acceptable in our communications. It's led to a greater, richer degree of conversation. And furthermore, you can see here in the grading side of it that I can choose to refine the simplifications of their mathematical expressions. There could be equivalent ones, but I want something rather robust and efficient in the way they submit their works. That too is a part of the WebAssign assessment environment that I wish to take advantage of when they're working algebraically to see the differences. It doesn't end there. Graphically, as I alluded to, for mathematical fidelity, we want the tools to be reminiscent of the pencil freedom that you get with submitting graphical creative works. There are restrictions to a digital world that I don't see it quite yet getting near that 100% fidelity, but it certainly lends itself to a great deal of improvement over multiple choice. Students have the ability to go across a number line with a great deal of adjustment, and they actually have to get an idea of what approximation is. And I can choose to alter the degree of precision at which we correctly mark their works. I have the ability to go in with other types of tools to look at parabolic and other types of mathematical relationships that allow us to delve further into their mathematical understanding, inequalities and the like, that help frame the key gateway course into algebra and ultimately calculus for those that need it. Now, the other piece to why WebAssign, not only did it have the time savings that I was looking for and the fidelity of grading and assessing mathematically the students' skills, but it has the ability for third-party integration, which I find important for customizing the needs of my classes and ultimately my campus and our efforts to improve developmental math learning. We were able to put in calculators or other free tools such as GeoGebra, allowing students to create and work with simulations that we wanted to add in addition to what was already part of the software. And when we started seeing those possibilities using iframe code, we were able to embed YouTube, Edpuzzle, and then now we're getting into digital inking tools that are just as well freely available, with the cusp of new digital tools being embedded right inside WebAssign is what we see on the horizon. So the idea here is that we can collect students' work. In the first iteration of this attempt to study these things, you can see the Dino example over to the right of the screen. That was my earlier work when I was trying to do the two. Now I can integrate the two together in a tool known as PencilPad. It's soon to probably be updated and renamed, and other kinds of evolutions coming into further improvements. But I'm able to integrate it within the learning assessment tool itself. It eliminates the need for additional sign-ins and other software, and it allows me to really get closer to not just a learning assessment tool, but really a learning environment. And I know that resembles that of Blackboard or an LMS kind of comment, but it really is getting into that solution that allows me to minimize the need of many other tools. So this is where I can get into some activity as time permits. I know I was intending this to be a long workshop, so I've done what I can to lay the foundation, and we can certainly spend a little time here going over a few minutes of what the tools might look like. The idea here is, again, making the students' thinking visible. How do we accomplish that? Can you imagine seeing what's going on in your student's mind in the academic sense of what they're wanting to convey to you and what they don't know and what they do know, and what ramblings you can put together to piece together that procedural and conceptual understanding? So time on task becomes an issue. You can actually watch the time they spend inking. You can see how much time do they spend, and there's a correlation between how much they doodle, if you will, to the amount of retention, both short and long term. There's an ownership that takes place when that commitment to paper, to digital screen takes place. And that allows that retention. And so the beauty of WebAssign allows me to not only put out questions that are dispersed initially for the purposes of initial review, I can put them in 3-4 weeks later for more long-term retention purposes, all scheduled and automated through adaptive releasing techniques that they have inherent with the software. So sequencing of things becomes important, more of a helical building of knowledge as they go through, revisiting topics over and over again. And then ultimately looking for that procedural fluency, what I'm calling there evaluating automaticity. So all that comes to a conclusion where I'm able to see inside the software with a classroom and student perspective. So as I integrate all this into one solution, I'm able to see through these tools of class insights how students are trying to solve these problems, but also their success at the first attempt, second, third, or multiple attempts, because many times in developmental math I'm striving for mastery. And I do give them many times to reach that level of mastery. I started out at 70%, 80% mastery. Now I'm striving for near 100% to get it right. I don't need the holes, and neither do my fellow faculty that follow with these students, need the holes of knowledge getting into their next levels of courses. It's a lofty goal, but it's one that's necessary for students to really build and continue their progression. We don't want them to know just half the alphabet. And I know we can get into subjective arguments about what is the totality of math and algebra that they need to know. But the idea still here is a worthwhile goal. And so with these tools, I can peer into what they know their first, second, or third time, or multiple times, or not at all. And in some cases, I purposely try to get the students to not get it right, to convey misconceptions. There's a great amount of research in conveying the misconceptions initially in your instruction to unravel it, to help the student unravel it as well. And so sometimes I'm looking to actually cause them to miss it the first time, to see if they're going to fall down that road of common misconceptions in the hopes of uncovering it and unraveling it for the purposes of securing it in the future, not letting it just accidentally dangle there as something we bypassed and got lucky. They happened to put the numbers together right conveniently. So, well, the benefits of the Collaboratory have certainly increased my students' engagement and participation. We have this as a model for other classrooms. We've been using it and looking at it for chemistry and other types of STEM courses, but it's looking at possible uses. I've worked with some folks in music and other disciplines where they convey a great deal of symbolic and handwriting and notation. Writings, things in general, are really what helps the digital inking environment unfold. Ultimately, the lecture assigned as homework, the flipped model is a big part of this. Group work, providing that assessment. So when you saw the work that she submitted to me, I actually write on the screen and send it back. And the students can play that back just as well. You can add audio if you choose to. But it allows me to flow the content, and I just hit return, and it just disperses back all those individual slides back to those students. Well, that's what's happening in the enhancements that WebAssign provides us with the digital inking and the tools that are out there. And so what happens is you're able to see the students on an individual basis, but also on a class basis. So note-taking is collaborative, the information being put back and forth. You can see here students still rely on the paper. They'll redundantly write things down, which is interesting itself. They're also getting rather clever in the way they submit their works. They go offline and put together the most pristine submissions now that they know I can look at the errors that they could have made. And I find that intriguing in the dispositions that they want to put forth their best work in many cases, or they don't want to be viewed as somebody who doesn't know something, I guess could be the other way to look at it. And I've been using this tool, this collection, as time on task, the digital ink. It provides a research insight. It also lends itself to a portfolio development. All this is digitally collected. And as we migrate over to assessing digital ink, to truly look at digital ink to what it has to offer, aggregating that and compiling and the statistics that come from that, that's what I see as the big data of our future when it comes to overwhelming amounts of information and how we can use it to the advantage of improving teaching and learning. So here's some examples that I've laid out for us as time permits. I lost 2 minutes, but the idea here is to see it in view. So I'm going to tab over to the environment itself to give you a glimpse of how it looks not only to a teacher, but also as a student. In this view, we have a layout of assignments that I've compiled for this demonstration of a course that has a number of features that you're welcome to take advantage of. If you wanted to, you could log in on your devices. It's possible going to, oops, sorry, wrong keystrokes. If you went to webassign.net, you would be able to log in on your phone, your Mac, your PC, and then there would be login information if you wanted to. I have set up accounts from V1 through V50, so you can choose any number you want. V1 is probably what most people would go to, so you'd all be sharing in on the same account at the same time. It can handle it. It's just not going to be very clean and understandable maybe. But you can pick a number between 1 and 50, and then the institution that you want to log in under would be Ohio. So that's the institution. And then the password is also an algorithm that allows you to go through. So if you pick V1, your password would be visitor1, all lowercase. If you pick V50, it would be visitor50. If you pick V33, it would be visitor33. So those are the pieces of information if you want to go in and play around, because it does offer a full range of what the capabilities I've talked about and how I've moved most of what I've shown you into one solution, with WebAssign being that one solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me capture that screen here, just to have it in paste in case you need it again. I'm going to show you the simplistic types of assignments that are available to students. I'm going to go back over here. Actually, I'm going to go into student view. In the student view, that when you log in, you'll be able to see a campus technology course that I've created. I have many, but you'll only see the campus technology course. And you'll be able to go into these assignments. And it's possible, with these assignments to see all the different inking, video, and assessment capabilities symbolically that exist. But there's also some new features that I just haven't had time to play around with that literally have been unleashed. Students can see their own individual progress in a way that's very similar to a class. So I just got word, I'm pushing my time limit, it is 10 o'clock. So I invite you to try these features out, to truly see how we've integrated video, to assess the data, to pull it all through the WebAssign environment, allowing you to really feel what it's like to show your work visibly to an instructor or to other students. So, any questions? I'll conclude and I'll break outside for any questions. I don't wish to take too much more time. Thank you, everyone.